The average new Genesis client increases insurance collections by 10%. The way we do that is we focus on what matters most, and that's follow-up. And then we automate everything else. So this is outside of how it improves compliance and patient retention and all those other things. This is just insurance. So let's look at how that process works. And to understand how this works, you really got to understand the billing process and every step in it. You probably know this in the back of your head, but let's look at the details here. So for example, preparation. All the things that actually go into preparing for even just one insurance claim to get out your door. You need to verify benefits, right? So either you call the insurance company or you use some online benefit verification. And I'm assuming in this case, 30 visits per patient. So if it takes you 15, 20 minutes, each visit, if you divide that over the visits, it's going to cost you half a minute. Hopefully that makes sense. For every visit that comes in the door, if you're collecting a payment from the patient every time they walk in, rather than automating that, it's going to take 1 minute for preparing that claim in that case. Because then you also have to post that payment to the patient account. Code selection. In many other systems, that's actually a separate part of getting an insurance claim out of the system. We'll talk about how Genesis automates this later on, but we're talking about code selection and who does that. A lot of times it's the doctor, or the doctor provides some type of documentation to somebody at the office, and then they actually select the diagnosis and procedure codes. I think very conservatively, that's a minute per claim. And then we're talking about a compliant note. So there also has to be a note. And what I mean by compliant note, I mean a note that actually matches the code, guaranteed every single time. Genesis, we automate that process. So we remove the code selection process, we remove the compliant note, meaning that we have a way to make sure that everything that's documented in the note gets billed, and everything that's billed is supported by what's in the documentation. So if we just add up claim preparation, in this case, it's 3.5 minutes per claim just to get the claim out the door. Then we have to submit the claim, submit and verify. So what I mean by that is uploading your claims to on a daily basis to some type of system. And at 100 visits a week even, that's about a minute per claim that it actually takes to upload to a clearinghouse or something like that. With Genesis, we automate that. Then we need to verify and correct. So a lot of times you upload claims to a separate system, you're logging into a separate system, and then you have to make sure that all of the errors that are shown in that clearinghouse are corrected and then resubmitted. But with Genesis, we've totally automated that, so that in addition to the compliant note and the code selection being done at the time of service, the claim is actually verified for you automatically, and if there's any errors, it gets bounced back to you in one place in the same system, so there's no separate upload. All billing is done in real time. Print and mail, if you do any paper claims, if you have personal injury and you have to mail a note, that's going to take you about at least 1 minute per claim. So if you have, let's say, a personal injury patient comes in, you at the end of the day, or if you do that once a week or what have you, you have to go to somewhere in the system, find that work, and then do the print and mail for each claim. And this is not counting the cost to print and mail. And then you have to verify the receipt. And a lot of times, in most systems, there's really hard to find out that the insurance company actually received the claim. With Genesis, on every claim that's submitted, we have a specific verification that tells us that either electronically an insurance company, or even with personal injury, that it was printed and mailed, and a tracking number. And then resubmit. So that, by the way, verify the receipt of the claim. That takes 0.1 minutes. I just put in an estimate, divided out over all the insurance visits for a 30-visit plan. And then resubmitting when claims need to be corrected and resubmitted, or resubmitted because they were never received. We're just adding a little bit of time for that type of stuff. So now we're at 3.2 minutes per claim for the insurance billing process. Posting, and posting comes with ERAs and EOBs. So posting takes at least 2 minutes per claim. So if you have paper claims and paper remittance that come back, that's one thing. If you have electronic EOBs, a lot of times those things still have to be manually posted, and the patient balance needs to be reconciled with the payment you took. And we automate all that process with Genesis. The electronic submission come in, we post for you if they're paper, and the patient's balance for that visit after it's posted, or what we call fully adjudicated, all of that patient balance is automatically reconciled. Secondary submission. So many times the patient has a secondary submission, and you have to go find the claims that came in and be sure to resubmit to the secondary carriers. That's at least a minute. Just finding the work is probably at least a minute, but even if you just have a simple report, to actually resubmit and make sure everything's done accurately, that's at least a second, another minute. So posting conservatively, very conservatively, is 3 minutes per claim. Now we're going to talk about follow-up, and this is how you actually get paid. So in many other systems, I'll say many, all other systems, this is the thing that gets diluted the most. We're doing all this other work in the beginning, and really what matters, what gets you paid, is follow-up. And what do I mean? First of all, we have to identify and quantify the number of claims that need to be followed up on. So as an owner of a practice or an office manager, it's impossible in any other system to know exactly how many claims need to be followed up on. And claims that need to be followed up on are claims that were denied, obviously. But one that's commonly missed is a claim that's slightly underpaid, and insurance companies know you can't find this, so they'll very commonly allow you something less than they used to allow you in the past. So for example, if they allow you $40 for a certain charge, let's say an adjustment, suddenly, all of a sudden, their allowable drops to $38, and they're paying you 80% of the allowable amount, let's say, just for argument's sake. So now it's 80% of the $38 and not the $40. It's very, very, very difficult to find that, and they know that. And in Genesis, we've totally automated the identification of not just denials but underpayments. We've also automated the process of secondary submission. So follow-up is key. So the claims that are supposed to be paid that have not been paid yet, the claims that are denied, the claims that are underpaid, finding all that work, Genesis takes all of those claims because, again, we're leveraging artificial intelligence. The system knows these things without you having to go to reports. It goes through your system, finds those claims, and then automatically sends those claims right to one screen for you. So you don't have to go digging through aging reports and digging through EOBs and all this stuff to find the claims that need work. And that's what I mean by quantify. Identify and quantify the work. So as the office manager or the practice owner, you know exactly how many claims need attention right now to optimize the collections. But in this older type of system, there's a lot of wasted time, just 3 minutes that I have there, just doing work finding the claims, let alone actually following up. Follow up, you can guarantee you're going to be on the phone with an insurance company just on hold a lot of that time for about 15 minutes per claim. And that we can't do much about. If you have to follow up, you have to follow up. But that's 18 minutes. And then balance. So again, we go back to the case where EOBs come in, there's a credit on the patient's account. We have to allocate that credit in older systems, take some of that portion of that money and allocate it to the patient's actual balance for that claim. Now in Genesis, we completely automate this. If there's a credit on the patient account, we actually automatically allocate that. And there's system configuration per practice and customization on how you want to handle that. You can allocate what's the credit on the patient's account and balance out that visit. If there's any remainder, you can set just a certain dollar amount to be allocated to visits and write off the balance. There's lots of different ways we do it in Genesis, but the point is the time it takes to do this so that when the patient comes in and you need to print them a statement, it's very accurate. The time it takes to do this is really just wasted time because it's completely automated otherwise. Balance billing. If the patient does have a balance, and in the case that you do want to balance bill patients, you have to, again, print and mail. Just conservatively using 1 minute for that situation here. But if you want to send statements, and how many statements do you want to send before you stop sending statements, and et cetera, we actually can automate that process. We can print and mail. We can email patient balances and statements. So automating these things is key to optimizing collections. Again, we can also automatically write off rather than balance bill. So that's 3 minutes. And again, so if we look at this and you divide out the time, you add up the time, it's 30 minutes, 30.7 minutes in this case. And these are all very conservative estimates. Here's the key. If you add up all these minutes and divide it by each step in the process, preparation takes 11% of the time, submit and verify takes 10% of the time, posting takes 10% of the time, follow-up, which is the thing that gets you actually paid, is 59% of the time. Let alone, not only is it time, but we're also talking about that this is an inefficient process because you're missing a lot of times underpayments and secondary submissions and all that. And it's very hard to know that you missed it without automation and quantifying that work on one screen. And then balancing out the patient account. So if you add all these things up, you can see what you want to be is that 59% should be closer to 100% if you want to collect every penny from the insurance companies and not waste your staff's time doing a ton of other things. So when you're not focused on doing the thing that gets you paid, you lose money. And this is why on average Genesis clients collect 10% more in insurance collections than using other systems. All right, so if we now kind of compare that to how Genesis does things and the time allocation for Genesis, we'll see ultimately that your accounts receivable over 120 days will go drastically down. The cost per claim goes drastically down, and the collections go drastically up. So you're decreasing overhead, decreasing wasted time, focusing your staff and your team. You can even outsource it to Genesis, and your collections go up. So decreasing cost and increasing collections in less time. And this is why we get this Genesis effect, if you would. So if we look at it for Genesis, no more benefit verification. That's done in an automated way. You can click and just see that in 2 seconds. Taking payment, completely automated. Either you take monthly payments in an automated way, or even if a patient comes in and you want to collect money every single visit, you can click one button and do the same payment with their credit card on file or even electronic funds transfer, but automated. Code selection, now you have to do some things. You have to document, you have to and select codes, but what happens in Genesis is because the note is so fast and the note generates the code, we cut that down to under 10 seconds. So on a consistent basis, and this is no longer on the shoulders of your staff. The doctor's doing the note anyway. And if the note generates the codes, it keeps your notes compliant, it keeps your coding compliant, and it gets the claim prepared, if you would, and out the door faster. So we're going to still allocate some time to that, but you could see compared to 3.5 minutes, it's much less. Submitting and verifying that's already done with Genesis in step 1. So there's no more uploading. There's no more verifying that the claim was actually received. There's no more printing and mailing because we completely automate that, even in the paper claim situation where we have to mail with notes. It's automatically attached. And we automatically verify the receipt of every single claim with full transparency on every single claim. And if it's not verified, it gets kicked back to the team. So resubmission, that's still going to take a little bit of time. We're just going to put 0.1 there. Although, just so you understand what resubmission means, is when in Genesis, if the claim is done at the time of service, if something's missing on that claim, or the account, the patient account, let's say it's a new patient, and you forgot to put the birth date in for the patient for some reason, that claim's going to get bounced right back to you on the same follow-up screen, and it'll tell you what to do, and you can do it right there and resubmit the claim right from there. So that resubmission process right there is a lot more automated, I'll say, but we're still going to allocate some times for click. Now, the important thing here, too, to remember is that it's caught in 1 second, right? It's bounced right back to you. So a lot of times we see a patient, especially a new patient, 3 times a week or something like that. A lot of other systems leave this buried somewhere. And so what happens is you make a mistake on the first visit, and then that mistake gets replicated many times. The way you find out about it is when those claims start to get denied, a week or so or two later, and now you don't have one claim that you're not going to get paid on. You have multiple claims that you're not going to get paid on. And if you make more than one mistake on a claim, insurance companies love just telling you about one mistake at a time. So they love to extend the payment cycle by weeks or months just by telling you one mistake at a time. In Genesis, this is all automated. Tell you every mistake that you make up front, because we have this, artificial intelligence with all the rules and validations built in, 2 million rules. It's going to tell you right up front and prevent other errors. So while I'm saying this resubmission process is 0.1 just like it was before, it's actually much less with Genesis. All right, posting. EOB posting, paper and electronic, completely automated. No extra time. Secondary submission, completely automated. So 0 time now posting. And then follow up. So you're still when on the claims that you do need to follow up on, you're still going to call the insurance company. You can outsource to Genesis, and we have hundreds of billers that do this. But if you're still doing it, we're just going to compare it that way. So claims that are late or denied or underpaid, now Genesis is automatically identifying those claims. Again, 2+ million rules built into the system and growing. And so what happens is, as insurance companies change their tactics and find new ways to make payments come back to you late, or new ways to deny or new ways to underpay you, Genesis is learning over time. So you're leveraging that artificial intelligence. Genesis is automatically finding those claims in the system, and it's automatically sending them to you on one screen. So you don't have to go into aging reports to find work. The work comes right to you, so you can do the thing that matters most, and that is follow up, of course. And if you have to follow up on an insurance company, you're going to spend 15 minutes. No matter what system you're using, it's still going to be that 15 minutes. And we're just using a conservative estimate. We know sometimes that's longer. For the balance of the actual claim, the patient balance, we automatically allocate any credit on the patient account to that balance. And like I said earlier, there's different configurations and customizations for how you want to handle this, but you can balance bill patients, which is automated with Genesis, either by mailing patient statements, or you can actually send even email to send them a statement or a balance bill, I'm sorry. And you can also automate the writing off. So you can say, hey, I want to take what the insurance company pays, as long as they paid, and then I want to write off the balance. And there's some more nuance to that when we get into care plans and how Genesis handles care plans and automates some of those things too. But for the purposes of this video, it's no time at the end of the day. You set everything up perfectly in the beginning, and there's no time writing off at the end. So now this is really important. So we look at, compared to above, the total here is 15.26 minutes. 1 minute on preparation, 1% on preparation, 0.7% on verify and submit, 0% on posting, no waste of time there. Now, because of the focus here, we're at 98.3% of the time that you spend now is done on follow-up, and 0% again based on the patient balance. So we're super focused, whether you're using Genesis in-house and doing your own follow-up or you're outsourcing to us, there's a huge benefit. If you're doing your own follow-up, now you, as the business owner, know exactly how many claims need to be followed up on today to optimize your collections. No other system gives you that level of control, even if you're outsourcing. So if you're outsourcing with Genesis, you still are using the same cloud-based system. And so Genesis is taking the claims and routing them to what we call the follow-up workbench. So you can see that number in real time every single day, 24/7, from anywhere there's internet connection. You can see that number, click on that number, see the claims we need to follow up on for you, and actually drill in, click on the claims, see what we said to insurance companies, see the full history and everything that's happened to that claim since the time it was submitted to the time we verified that it was actually received by the insurance company. If we had posted any EOBs or any payments and we're still following up because of underpayments, or it has to go to a secondary, a full audit trail of everything that's happened on that claim is transparent to you, even though you're outsourcing. So whether you keep things in-house or you're outsourced with Genesis, you have way more control than in many cases than you even do with in-house with any other system. So either way, you have total control, and what this ultimately does is takes that wasted time and staff time and overhead associated with staff, with sick time and staff turnover and the office space that's needed for all this extra staff and time and resources. You're just eliminating all that and taking your person that's great at follow-up and letting them do what they do best, and that's just following up on your claims. All the time you know exactly, are they doing all the work or are they lagging behind, and why? If somebody's out sick for some reason, that work stays on that workbench, so they can come right back and get right back into it and get caught up. And so again, driving and keeping insurance companies accountable to paying you. So I want to show you a little bit more of an analysis here. Claims that need follow-up, we talked about, that's going to take you that 30 minutes, 30.7 minutes. If you took at the hours per claim divided by 60 minutes per hour, it's actually, and this is over a 30 visit care plan, 0.52 hours. I'm sorry, yeah, this is how many hours per claim. So it's 0.52 hours per claim. So 30 minutes equals 0.52 hours per claim. If you pay your staff conservatively, I know a lot of places it's higher than this, but $12 an hour, that means it's costing you $6.24 per claim to do the whole process from beginning to end. So this is important that you understand that there's a cost to follow up. It's not just your clearinghouse fees. There's the time that it costs you to process a claim from beginning to end, with all the steps that we talked about. In the example on the top of the screen, we're talking about 6.24. Another important thing, claims that do not need follow-up. Okay, so we have claims that do not need follow-up because even though you're not following up, you can see all the other steps still need to happen. Regardless of, even if you just got paid on that claim, you just sent it and it got paid, there's still all this other wasted time. You're still wasting 19.7 minutes per claim. In other words, if we can automate all that with Genesis like we do, it's eliminating all that time for your staff. So 19.7 minutes is equivalent to 0.33 hours per claim. So even if a claim just got paid just by submitting it at $12 an hour, claims that do not need follow-up are costing you $3.94 per claim. And that's in the example above. So this is why Genesis just drastically reduces the cost per claim, but also it drives up the collections. So now with Genesis, since we've driven that down to 15.26 minutes per claim, this is claims that do need follow-up, that equals 0.25 hours per claim. And at $12 an hour, now we're talking about $3.52 per claim. On the claims that actually need follow-up, that's your new cost. We've eliminated so much work, not to mention we made it way more efficient to actually follow up and increase collections, but this is just the cost to process the claim from beginning to end for a claim that does need follow-up. So you can see this is about half of what it costs you to get for a claim to get paid right now. And claims that do not need follow-up still takes a little bit of time, 0.26 minutes, but what does that look like on an hourly basis or a per claim basis? It's 0.004 hours per claim. At $12 an hour, that's 5 cents per claim. So we're driving down the cost. We're focusing you on what matters most. We're giving you way more control as an owner and office manager to know exactly how much work needs to happen every single day, again from anywhere, so that you can drive up the collections. And also, you're in another way, you're driving up collections, not just collecting from what you need to from insurance companies, but making sure those patient balances are accurate. Patient needs a statement, you can give it to them, you know it's accurate, but you're also making sure you collect what you should be from the patient.